everyone, to this installment of my Building Thinking Classrooms video series from Keep Indiana Learning. Today we'll be zeroing in on the strategy of the banner method. We're going to be seeing videos from two high school math classrooms at Franklin Community High School in Franklin, Indiana. First, we'll be talking with Candie Miller, and we'll catch up with Leslie Hash in a few minutes. Candie, thank you so much for being a part of this important work.
Absolutely. I really enjoy all this, and I want to get the word out of how awesome this is. So thank you for having me.
Good, good. I'm excited. The banner method. We need to talk a minute about what it is and how it works.
Okay. In the book, The Building Thinking Classrooms, Peter usually has like the top portion of each of the vertical boards is for places that he could put problems for the students to do. And a lot of times he hand wrote them when I was there in Hawaii, or he also had slips, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically in the book, it's just that top portion of the board that the students will be able to look at to keep the knowledge flowing throughout the lesson.
Yeah, so they've already got what they need to start working, right. So let's take a look at our first clip and see a little bit of that banner method in action.
Okay.
Great.
Bottom.
Yep.
And we get 8. So we'll just be 0.
There we go.
I might be erase.
Good job.
Yeah, we're good.
This is a harder one.
Yeah.
And you don't put a 0 either.
Yeah, factors. So
That's what
you did right there.
Okay.
So you're ready for D, right?
Yeah.
Keep going on that one though. Finish C.
So then we have to finish the minus.
This one's hard.
Maybe this
Okay, why did I put a star?
I loved the moment when the students were able to just go on to the next problem. They didn't have to stop their progress. They didn't have to check in with you. And it looks though like you've adapted that banner method a little bit for your own classroom. Tell us more about that.
Okay. When I watched Peter do this in Hawaii, I got to see him do a geometry class 3 times, for example, and 3 Algebra 1 classes. So he had the geometries cut into little like slips of paper. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that he's doing that. Then he handed me and some other teachers that were there and said, okay, put these in order from difficult, like easiest to difficulty. So I thought, okay, that was interesting. So I got to observe how he did that process. And then I asked him, I was like, so why are they giving them little slips of paper? And he says it reinforces them to redraw it. And so they'll make a bigger connection. So I thought that was interesting. And so when he first walked in into the classroom, Sherry, who was his co-teacher at that moment, and Peter were going around with tape and taping them individually onto the board. So I thought, okay, that's not going to work with just me. It was easy. It was a piece of cake when the both of them were doing it, and they could like handle it going too. But when it was just me, it was a hot mess.
We don't always have an extra set of hands.
We do not. And so that's when I came up with the little sticky tacks that I had on there. The other thing is it just keeps that momentum going. So like usually when I do it, I'll put them in the order, like I think easiest to difficult. And then I usually put the first one face up and then the others are face down. So then like when they finish the first one, they know to go on to the second one while they're waiting on me to come back and check on them. And it's just a nice way to keep the knowledge flowing. And sometimes it works out great, and then sometimes I have to adjust during the lesson.
And I like you use the word flowing. He uses that word
knowledge flow, yes.
Yeah, just keeping things moving. I think some teachers that I have seen waste so much time because they have the students just waiting on them to come back without something else to do.
And I did notice that for me. Like I'm like, okay, what can I do better to adjust this? And that's when I started coming up with having at least 2 or 3 on the board for me because I couldn't keep up. And then I was getting all the things all twisted. So I just started coming up with different ways to just do it. The other thing I wanted to mention that I love about the banner method is that kids, when they steal problems, so like if they're not waiting on me and I can hand write a problem on someone else's banner And then those kids will know, okay, so where do I just need to look around? Okay, there's a problem over there I haven't done yet. So they just steal from boards. So that's what makes it, and that helps the knowledge keep flowing too.
Excellent. Let's watch another group that you were helping,
Okay.
another little clip, and then we'll talk about that.
So now you're on this one? Okay, so let me ask you this, on your restrictions, look up here. Is there any restriction on this one at all? When did I tell you that that was gonna have a restriction at zero? Is there anything that you have to plug in right there with that X? Is there an X here? There's not an X here, so is there gonna be any restriction on that, this 10 on the outside? No, just
Oh, I
X.
actually put 10, my bad.
Okay, all right, so you ready for this one?
Yep.
In that clip and watching the rest of your classroom, you make it look like such a slick process. You make it look easy. You're already there helping them, and you can see which problem they're on, and then just pop up the next question, and they're ready to go.
Yes.
So,
Okay. Why, how that, I don't know. So like I said, it takes a lot of planning just to have things ready to go for the lesson. And then, like I always, try to keep as many, I want to be one question ahead of them. At least that's my trying. And so I think that one clip that we talked about, we went and I was getting overwhelmed because I had too many papers, so I had to start handwriting them on the board. And so then they had to steal from the Banner method that way.
which is a perfect kind of alteration
Mm-hmm.
of the method.
But, and then if they're getting it easy, and I always have extensions ready, so if these kids are flying right through it, it's always nice to have one on the fly that I can throw up, and then kids will be able to do a challenging one until we're done. So, yeah.
And I think our next clip shows that. Let's see what that looks like.
Okay.
Candie, if a teacher wanted to, could they just start the class with a few problems on the board that are ready for them and then just add to those problems? Could they do the whole class on one board?
So what I did, I was talking about a lesson I had for solving logarithmic equations, and when I knew it was going to be a task because they were going to be hard, they're going to look at them and then freak out a little bit. So what I did at the beginning, at the beginning of on the board, I put easy ones, and then they just kept progressively getting harder, and I had them written all over the room. And I said, that's where you need to go. And so they were looking like they were shocked, that looks completely hard. So then they were able to progress and see, and they were so focused because they know it's going to get hard if I don't pay attention, then I'm not going to be able to do that. So I even had to, in some classes, have something ready because they already got the hard one, and so they were ready for the next level. So yes, that is entirely possible, and kind of like a scare tactic, I guess, but I was like, if you don't pay attention today, you're not going to be able to do this. And it was great, so yes, you definitely can do that.
That's awesome. And I love that you said they got to that hard one pretty quickly.
Yes.
Because the process worked.
Yes, and they could not, they're like, I can't believe we did that problem. I was like, I can. Trust the process. So,
Oh, that must mean our time is up.
that's
No.
good. Yeah.
Thank you, Candie, though, for your willingness to share your classroom and
Sure.
your experiences. I love it. This is going to help so many teachers add some variety to their thinking classrooms.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, all right. We're going to check in with Leslie.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Fantastic.
Okay.
Fantastic. Welcome, Leslie. I'm excited to have our viewers visit you and your classroom for a moment.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm here. I'm a little nervous about this, but it'll be all right.
It'll be fine. It'll
Yeah.
be just fine. We're talking about the Banner method, and you've taken a little different spin on it. Let's take a look at our first short clip, and then we'll talk about how you've really shifted the learning to the students.
Okay.
Great.
And then we found a GCX. Yeah, but we don't have. Yeah, we don't have. So you're just gonna do x and x.
X equals 13.
No, you're going to do like x.
That was a very simple clip of students working on boards, but they were working on specific problems, number 12 and number 1. Tell us what you've done with the banner method and how those problem numbers play into it.
Okay. Well, what I did is they were learning to verify trig identities, which is difficult for a lot of kids. And so what I did is I particularly numbered them 1 through, I can't even remember how many numbers were up on the board, but bottom line, there were some more simplified versions and more complicated versions, and I put more than enough for the kids to be in groups and be able to go from one problem to the next when they finished it. And there would be everyone having a problem to do and being able to navigate. So the banner method typically allows you to put problems up on the board, at the top of the board, and then once kids get done working, they kind of look off the other kids that have problems and they steal those. And they just kind of keep erasing theirs and they do another one, where I felt like they couldn't really do that very well with the trig because it would take a lot just to write the problem.
They're complicated.
Yeah, and so I just had various ones on the board. Instead of them staying in space, they just kind of walked between them.
Yeah, well, and Peter always says, take this and make it your own.
Yeah.
And so you did that to make it work for you. Let's watch a couple of groups now moving to that next problem that you were talking about in our next clip.
Okay.
Yeah, I still owe him $5.
It seems on the surface like there was not much to that clip, just watching a group move over to the next board. But that's the idea, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is, yeah.
They moved without any fanfare, without any disruption, and really without needing permission or acknowledgement from you. You were free to just move around and help kids. How has this improved your classroom and changed your vision of what teaching is supposed to be like?
Okay. I very much was like, I'll do the example, we'll do a guided practice, and then you try. And I've always believed that being at the boards is very, very beneficial. But before this Building Thinking Classrooms book came out, I would never have thought to just ask our school to give me more whiteboards. And so when that opportunity came, it just seemed like a no-brainer to me. Because we went from, well, let's work in groups, let me follow around, make sure you're working, to like, okay, we'll buy the little whiteboards where you can let's show your answers and we can check that way. Well, here, the kids they're not really visible. They're working in groups, they have the support of their peers, they have the support of me walking around and seeing where I need to tweak or what I need to do better. And I really feel like it takes the kids the ownership, and they're just more engaged. I don't know how else to say it. They're just more engaged.
Yeah, that's what we're after.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. At one point in the class, when most students had gotten through all of the initial problems that you'd posted, you changed it up a little bit with a challenge. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think when that happened, I wanted to challenge them more. So I kind of thought, well, they've got the basics. I've had some more that were more complicated. And it was funny how the groups they knew where they needed to go. And they knew where they needed to be. And so a lot of them just started where they needed to be. And by the end, after they all basically got through all the basic problems, I went back through and I added more challenge problems. And they started working their way through those as well. And I thought that was they did it, but they needed to make sure they understood the basics before they could move on to something more complicated.
And it's putting that decision making in their hands.
Yes.
Which I love.
Yes.
And we've got a really short clip of what that looks like. And so let's take a look at that.
Let's go with the harder one. This one. I think we can do it.
This clip, Leslie, reminds me of the mild, medium, and spicy problems that Peter talks about in his book. Do the students usually like being able to choose which problem they do, and how often do they choose the more difficult one?
I kind of just hit on that, but I think to go back, they do choose where I feel like they need to be. So I do think kids kind of pick out where they start. I think a lot of times they do challenge themselves more than we give them credit to. But I feel like for a student that really, really is struggling, they'll have college, especially if I let them pick their groups. So sometimes I don't always do that. They're good about trying to figure out where they need to be and what they need to do. But I would say most kids kind of would pick off the intermediate. They would pick the what I think he calls medium, right? And then there's some that will just go right to the spicy. So they want more and more and more.
And I think it's always better that they try something more challenging and fail, because they'll learn from that.
Yes.
When they go back
Yes.
to a little easier problem and use what they learned from
Yes.
that harder problem.
Yes. And I love, because I find when kids are struggling, or if they go to the more difficult question, that when they ask a question, I can kind of often tell are they trying just to mimic what I've said, or are they really understanding? And I love the questions because they're more clarification of their understanding than it is trying to just fit it into the mold that they're supposed to know.
That's
And it's-
fantastic. I love that. Thank you, Leslie, so much for sharing your variations on the Banner method. You've given our viewers a great opportunity to kind of spice up their board work a little bit and change it up. And that does it for us. You can watch this video and find others in the series at kinl.cc/exemplar videos. Or search Keep Indiana Learning and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get access to our entire collection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.